Today I'm going to cover the proper rigging of the hook pile tape lowering line and the MAWC, and how to take the hook pile tape lowering line and attach it to your MAWC rucksack. The first thing I like to do with a hook pile tape lowering line is stretch it all the way out so that it's nice and smooth, so I'm not fighting any twists in it. Next thing I'll do is I'll take my stows, the hook pile tape lowering line, and I will start folding it into the retainer flap. All of the stows need to be contained within the retainer flap. The standard is actually 1/4 of an inch on the outside of the retainer flap. So it could be 1/8 outside on both sides, 1/4 inch and 0 on one side or the other, and still be within the standard. However, I like to make sure that it's completely contained. That way there's no question on whether it's within 1/4 inch or not. I like to hold the stow and grab the next section and fold it to the right length. As you can see, a lot of these hook pile tape lowering lines are folded longer than they actually should be. So those folds will naturally go where you don't want them to be. You got to make sure that you are not folding those hook pile tape lowering lines longer than they should be. One way to get around doing that, I'll explain as I keep going. One way to get around doing or having the folds where you don't want them is to take your hook pile tape lowering line and fold it correctly, the way I'm showing you now. Get it soaking wet and put it in the freezer. Soaking wet. Put it in the freezer and let it freeze solid overnight. After it's frozen solid, take the hook pile tape lowering line out of the freezer and let it thaw out and dry. The folds should then be at the proper spot so that when you're re-rigging your hook pile tape lowering line, it'll be real easy for you. You won't have to fight these extra corners, these extra folds in places that you don't want them. So as I'm getting toward the end of the hook pile tape lowering line, I always like to maintain control of either one side or the other so that it's not folding over or becoming tangled or becoming a big mess. When I get to the last stow, the hook tape needs to go onto the pile tape. So I like to hook that together first before I make that last stow, so that I know that it's attached in the right spot, and that stow, that last fold, is going to be in the middle somewhere. But it's going to be the right length, and everything's going to be contained within the retainer flap. The reason I knelt on this side of the hook pile tape lowering line is because the retainer flap is on this side of it. So I'll take that retainer flap and I'll fold it over all of my stows to make a nice tight roll. And I want that hook tape to be on the top of all of the stows, so that when I fold it over, it looks something like this. And I'll take this last section of hook pile tape and I'll fold the pile tape over the ends of the stows and attach it to the hook tape. So as you can see, I've got one stow that's sticking out about 1/4 of an inch. This is to standard. However, if it's sticking out like that, I can always take it and stuff it back in there, just so that it's retained within the retainer flap. Now, attaching the hook pile tape lowering line to the MAWC ruck goes something like this. After your MAWC ruck is completely hooked up or rigged up, I'm going to take my hook pile tape lowering line and set it something like that. I'm going to route the looped end of the hook pile tape lowering line north to south or south to north, never east to west. through around the X. Route the hook pile tape lowering line through the looped end. When I cinch it down, I don't just grab onto this retainer flap, because as I pull it, it's going to actually pull out of the retainer flap. So I want to grab the hook pile tape lowering line below this piece of hook pile tape and cinch it down nice and tight on the X, north to south. Then I'm going to route the hook pile tape lowering line. Works better if it's farther toward the top of your ruck. Then I'm going to route the hook pile tape lowering line through one of the retainer bands, through the second retainer band, and when I'm finished, the hook pile tape lowering line should be contained within the retainer flap. Sometimes this will bend like this in order for you to get it over to the side where it needs to be, and what will wind up happening is it'll start pushing it out on one end. If that happens, just push it back in. I like to take the ejector snap and hook it on the left adjustable D-ring attaching strap triangle link, just so that it's not flopping all over the place. That is the proper rigging and attaching of your hook pile tape lowering line. One last check you need to do is to make sure that all of your stows are contained within the retainer flap on both ends. Okay. Next I'll cover the MAWC, Modular Airborne Weapons Case. When I rig the Modular Airborne Weapons Case, I like to start on one side and work my way to the other side. So I start at the nose cone and I make sure that it's rigged properly, and this is how you'll do it. Modular Airborne Weapons Case, this is the nose cone, has two pieces of webbing that cover the pile tape, or excuse me, the hook tape, and separates it from the pile tape that's on the nose cone. First thing I do is make sure that it's sized properly to the weapon that I'm putting in there. For this exercise, I'm going to put it up close to the end of the MAWC. You'll remove that webbing and fold it back down under so that the hook tape and the pile tape will join up together. You'll do that on both ends. Next, you'll ensure that the lower tie-down strap, or excuse me, your lower leg strap, whatever it's called, do what I say, do, not what I say, so that your lower leg strap is tucked into the lower tie-down leg strap into the stow pocket. You're going to ensure that the snap fastener is actually snapped, and it's not just velcroed, but that it's actually snapped on there. So I like to make sure that that snap is snapped before I actually allow the hook and pile tape to make contact. That way I'm sure that the snap fastener is fastened. Next, I'm going to make sure that the nose cone adjusting straps, securing straps, are tight, and it's not going to allow the nose cone to slip out any farther than it's meant to. The excess webbing, I'm going to stick them through the pouch attachment ladder system, and I'm going to make sure that they're secured as well. And one way to do that is to, if you route it like this, and then with this tab facing up like this, so the tab comes all the way through that other piece of pals. It won't ever come out. And I do that on both sides. So that nose cone adjusting strap and the free running end are completely secured. This adjusting strap, just cinch it down. It doesn't have to be super tight, but it does need to be snapped down. Next, the internal padding. I'm going to fold it down. I'm going to ensure that my weapon is pointing barrel down and that it is inside the nose cone, not on the outside of the nose cone. So it goes inside the nose cone. The buttstock of the rifle goes into the rifle butt stow pocket. Ensure that your forward assist on your weapon is facing up. Next, I'm going to make sure that these snap fasteners are attached to the snap fasteners on the other side of the MAWC. So in order to do that, what I like to do is make sure that they're snapped up before I let the hook and pile tape join together, because if I don't, then it's hard to adjust it if I need to move it a little bit in order to snap them together. Next thing I'm going to do is attach the slide fastener and tabbed thong, and I'm going to do it all the way up to the spring opening gate. It needs to go on the bottom side of the spring opening gate like this to prevent it from falling all the way off the slide fastener. At this point in time, I'm going to fold the MAWC, and I'm going to attach these quick release buckles together. I'm going to ensure that the free running end of the webbing is secured. It can be folded or rolled in the webbing retainer. The upper tie-down tape will be routed through the tab thong, the lower portion of the tab thong, like this. The upper tie-down tape will then wrap around the MAWC and tie in a bow knot on the front of the MAWC. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to make sure that the snap shackle is adjusted to the proper height on my body for the weapon that I'm carrying. And I'm going to make sure that the yellow safety lanyard is attached by the snap fastener. If it's not, I'm going to snap it. It can snap on any one of these. If the weapon that you're carrying is much longer, it's obviously going to, the weapon you're carrying is much longer, it's obviously going to be down like this. If it's much shorter, it's going to be up a little bit farther. The snap shackle will be up a little bit farther, and you can snap this onto this snap fastener. That is it. So as I'm ensuring that this is properly rigged, I start down here at the nose cone, making sure that the hook and pile tape is attached on both ends. on both sides of the nose cone. I'm going to make sure that the snap fastener is snapped and not just Velcroed. I'm going to ensure that the buckles, the quick release buckles, are snapped up. I'm going to ensure that the upper tie down tape is tied in a bow knot on the front of the MAWC, not on the back, not back here, up here. I'm going to ensure that the slide fastener is at the proper position with the spring, upper spring stop. As I open the MAWC, I'm going to ensure that the snap fasteners are snapped and it's not just Velcroed together with the hook pile tape. I'm going to make sure the buttstock is in the right spot on the buttstock stow pocket, rifle butt stow pocket. And I'm going to make sure that my webbing is secured, the free running ends are secured, and that it's tensioned properly. And that's how you rig a MAWC and a hook pile tape lowering line. That's all.